Anawrahta, the first king of Burma and the sacred conquest. Introduction. A call from the plain of 1,000 temples. When the first light of dawn sweeps across the arid plains of central Myanmar, it does not illuminate skyscrapers, but thousands of ancient red brick temple spires. This is Bagan, one of the greatest archaeological wonders of humanity. Every temple, every pagoda here is a prayer made of brick and stone, the legacy of a glorious empire that once was. But who sowed the first seeds on this field of faith? Who had the vision to transform a small city-state into a mighty empire and turn a land of diverse beliefs into a brilliant Buddhist center? The history of Myanmar has only one answer. It is the warrior king, the great religious reformer, the man considered the father of the Burmese nation, King Anawrahta. This is his story, a story of unification by the sword and conquest by faith. Chapter 1. Burma in the mists of history. Before 1044. Before Anawrahta ascended the throne, the land we now call Myanmar was a fragmented political landscape. The glorious Pew civilization of ancient city-states had faded. In the south, the Mon Kingdom of Thaton was a wealthy cultural and religious center, controlling the coastal trade routes and safeguarding the scriptures of Theravada Buddhism. In the arid central zone, through which the Irrawaddy River flows, the Burmese people, or Burmans, had settled and established a small city-state centered on Bagan. But at this time, Pagan was just one of many minor powers, and its spiritual life was a complex mixture. The people worshipped nature gods and ancestral spirits in an indigenous belief system known as the Nat cult. Alongside this was an early form of Buddhism called Ari Buddhism, a branch of Mahayana that had mixed with tantric elements and local rituals. According to later Burmese chronicles, the Ari monks held great power but practiced rituals that were considered corrupt. The land of Burma at this time lacked a leader capable of unifying its peoples and lacked a religious ideology strong enough to serve as a binding thread. History was waiting for such a king. Chapter 2. The Fateful Duel and the Ascension. 1040. Anawrahta did not step onto the stage of history with a peaceful coronation, but with a dramatic duel. He was the son of a previous king of Bagan, but the throne had been seized by his half-brother Sokate. According to the chronicles, Anawrahta challenged Sokate to single combat on horseback. The duel took place on the banks of the Irrawaddy River. With superior strength and fighting skill, Anawrahta threw his spear and killed Sokate, gloriously reclaiming the throne. That was the year 1044. This event not only showed Anawrahta's courage, but it also sent a clear message to all surrounding powers. A new, strong, and decisive warrior king had emerged in Bagan. He began to consolidate his power, build his army, and prepare for a much greater ambition: the unification of the entire land of Burma. Chapter 3. The encounter that changed history. Anawrahta and the monk Shin Arahan. A few years after his ascension, a fateful event occurred that would completely change Anawrahta as a man and the history of his kingdom. A young Mon monk from the southern kingdom of Thaton named Shin Arahan came to Bagan. The monk explained to the king a different spiritual path, a purer doctrine that was closer to the original teachings of the Buddha. That was Theravada Buddhism, as practiced in his homeland. Anawrahta, a man searching for a solid ideological foundation for his kingdom, was immediately captivated by Shin Arahan's wisdom and orthodox teachings. He realized this was the ideology he needed to purify the faith and unify his people. Anawrahta made Shin Arahan his chief religious advisor and resolved to make Theravada Buddhism the state religion. But there was one major problem. Bagan at that time did not possess a complete Tipitaka, the Pali canon, to serve as a basis for study and practice. The only place in the region that had this complete set of scriptures was the Mon Kingdom of Thaton. Chapter 4. The Conquest of Thaton, 1057. When the victor was conquered by culture, driven by religious piety and the advice of Shin Arahan, King Anawrahta sent envoys to Thaton, requesting that King Manuha of the Mon share a set of the Tipitaka. King Manuha, with the arrogance of an older cultural center, flatly refused the request from the king of a city-state he considered barbaric. This refusal gave Anawrahta the perfect pretext. In 1057, he led a mighty army south, besieging and conquering the capital of Thaton. But this conquest was not merely a military invasion. It was the greatest cultural plunder in Southeast Asian history. The spoils of war that Anawrahta brought back to Pagan were not just gold and silver. He brought back the entire Mon royal family, including King Manuha himself, more than 30,000 captives, among them the most talented Mon artisans, architects, artists, and scholars. And most importantly, 32 complete sets of the Tipitaka, carried on the backs of 32 white elephants. This event created a strange historical paradox. In military terms, the Bamar of Bagan had conquered the Mon of Thaton. But in cultural terms, it was the Mon who conquered their victors. A great flow of knowledge, art, and religion from Thaton poured into Bagan, transforming a military capital into a brilliant cultural and religious center. The Mon artisans taught the Bamar how to build stupas and temples, how to sculpt, and even their writing system profoundly influenced the later formation of the Burmese script. Chapter 5. The Undying Legacy, Temples and Spirits. With the scriptures in hand and an army of artisans at his command, Anawrahta began a revolution of construction and religion. Building pagodas. He initiated the construction of the first great temple of Bagan, the Shwe-Zi-Gon Pagoda. This pagoda was built to enshrine a replica of a Buddha tooth relic brought from Sri Lanka, becoming a symbol of the Dharma's protection over the new dynasty. Unifying beliefs. Anawrahta was a pragmatic politician. He understood that he could not completely eradicate the Nat worship that was deeply ingrained in the people's consciousness. Instead, he skillfully incorporated it into the new Buddhist system. He formalized the list of spirits, decreeing that there were 37 official Nats, and declared that they were the protectors of Buddhism. Statues of the Nats were even placed within the precincts of the Shwe-Zi-Gon Pagoda. In this way, he created a uniquely Burmese form of Buddhism, where the Dharma and indigenous beliefs could coexist harmoniously. Politically, Anawrahta succeeded in unifying most of the territory of modern-day Myanmar, bringing the major ethnic groups like the Bamar, Mon, Piu, and Shan under a single rule for the first time. He laid the firm foundations for the Bagan Empire, the first Burmese empire in history. Conclusion. The Great Founder. In the year 1077, after 33 years of a glorious and turbulent reign, King Anawrahta died. According to legend, he was gored to death by a wild buffalo while hunting, a violent and dramatic end befitting the life of a warrior king. The kings who succeeded him, such as Kian Sitha and Alaung Situ, continued his work, building thousands more temples and turning Bagan into a holy land. But it was Anawrahta who was the true architect, the one who laid the three immortal foundations for the nation of Myanmar: a unified territory, a united people, and a national religion. The light from his reign gave birth to an empire and continues to illuminate the entire history of Burma that followed.